Now in our last video, when we took a look at the NZXT H1 V2 Mini-ITX case, I said that we were actually going to be doing a build in it. We were actually going to shrink one of the studio systems down to actually make it a little bit more mobile, and this case was so cool that of course we wanted to do something like that. So I've been collecting parts and we're going to go an all team blue build in this today, and I thought I'd take you along for the ride to show you how you would actually build into it. So for those of you that watched the previous video, this is the NZXT H1 version 2 case. It's the one that doesn't set on fire. It is a Mini-ITX case, which actually comes with quite a few components. It comes with a 750 watt gold rated power supply and a 140mm all-in-one cooler. At about £200 for this complete unit, it's actually not that badly priced, because if you were to try and buy something this size and buy all those components separately, it would cost you over that anyway. So we kind of felt that it was a pretty good deal. The build that we're putting into this case today is actually a shrunken version of one of our studio systems. We have a system that we kind of use for a little bit for office work, so spreadsheets and building graphs for the videos and things like that, as well as doing a little bit of light gaming when we don't really have anything to do. So the system doesn't need to be completely intense. It doesn't have to be a very high-end system. It just needs to be something that can do that kind of work, but at a shrunken size. And for that, I've chosen these components. We have gone with an all-team blue. So for the motherboard, we're actually going to be using this Asrock B660I ITX board. I've had this board for a while now. They are actually pretty cheap. You can buy them for around £130 now, and it comes with everything that we would need. It also comes with wireless, so you're actually getting quite a lot for your money on this. But of course, it is an LGA 1700 socket board, so we'll need an LGA socket CPU. For that, we've decided to go with this i3 12100F. When it comes to memory and storage, I've gone with a Crucial kind of combination here. I've gone for some of this Crucial DDR4 because the board is a DDR4 board. It is the Crucial Pro series. They don't really do the ballistic anymore, or at least they don't in DDR4. You can actually pick these up for around £47, and this is a 32GB kit, so it's two 16s, and it'll go in this board perfectly fine and work great with the i3 processor. And it's going to give me plenty of RAM to do all of those weird spreadsheets that we do here. For storage, I've gone for something a little bit more fancier. It is from Crucial again, but it is the Crucial P5 Plus. The plus on this actually means that it is a PCI Gen 4 NVMe drive, which means I'm going to get some decent speeds when it comes to actually read writes. I've never actually used this specific model before, but I purchased this one specifically because it does come with the heatsink on the chip. They don't cost that much at all. It's a 1TB drive, and I think I paid about £60 for it. But I kind of hoped that the heatsink will actually add to the heat dissipation of the system, particularly when it's a Mini-ITX system. You want something that can actually draw that heat out quite well, and hopefully this will do the job. Now, originally when it came to graphics cards, I was going to install our A750 from Intel, but instead I've decided to go with the Intel Arc A750. This is an 8GB card. We've seen it many times before on the channel. It's more than capable of gaming, and it looks gorgeous too. The only thing that you're missing really is the RGB lighting when it comes to looks. Of course, the A770 that we do have is a 16GB, but I have lots of different plans for that one later on anyway. And this one is going to be plenty for the rest of this system, and it's going to work perfectly fine. Now, when it comes to systems like this, obviously, because the case includes most of the components, we don't really have to do a lot. Those are the kind of major components that we really needed, and to be honest, the system wouldn't even cost you that much. I wouldn't actually go for this kind of setup if you are going for a full-on gaming machine, because the RAM is a little bit slow compared to what else you can buy for the same money. The graphics card, obviously, we want more VRAM nowadays, so if you're going to go out and buy a brand new graphics card, you want at least 12GB, so go with something on the AMD range, particularly for the price. And of course, you want to go a little bit faster on the CPU. I would aim for something like a 12600K, particularly if you're going to use it just for gaming. But for us, this is going to be perfectly fine. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is actually I'm going to build this motherboard up. I'm going to add everything to it. We are also going to be using a contact plate just to make sure that everything's perfectly fine. So we're going to be removing the plate from the existing board, or the little retention brackets to hold the CPU down. We're going to get the CPU installed. We're going to get the RAM installed. We're going to get the SSD installed. And then we'll go through the process of actually how we put it all inside the case. So now that we've got the motherboard built, we've got our RAM in, we've got our CPU with our contact frame in. The contact frame here is actually from Thermalright. It's just one that I had laying around. And we've got our little M.2 or our NVMe drive installed there. One of the most annoying things about these little NVMe drives is the fact that the writing is upside down. This board seems to actually insert the NVMe round differently to other boards. I don't know why, but I'm sure once it's in the case, we're not even going to notice, but as you can see, it's actually a pretty clean design on this board. The next thing that we need to do is obviously put the board to the side and get this case apart. Now to do that, we did learn some lessons in our last video, and if you haven't watched that, we'll link it at the end so you can go check it out. We need to first remove the front glass panel, and to do that, it just simply clicks off from the bottom, just like any case would. Then you have to kind of give it a bit of a wiggle just to get the top poppers off. They are a little bit of a pain, but we've got our glass panel off. Then we have to remove the back panel, and that's a very similar kind of way. You just need to pop your hands into there and pull it off the little poppers. The back panel does act as an exhaust really, so it's a nice mesh thing and everything plugs in the bottom of the case. We'll put that one down there. And then once you've got the front and the rear off, you can actually just slide the other panels. It's kind of like looped over the top, up and off of the case. Now that we've got all the panels off, we can actually see what's actually in there. At the front here, this is our all-in-one cooler. We actually do need to remove these 2 screws just to drop it out, and we'll need to do that to fit our motherboard. We've got lots of padding in here that we need to remove. We've got plastic bags on all of our cables, so we'll just prep the case and we'll take some of this stuff off so that we can actually see what's what. And then we'll focus on actually installing the motherboard first. So we'll flip the case over just like that, and we'll grab a screwdriver. And then what we'll do is we'll start to undo the screws, removing these screws here and here. They don't actually come out. They're actually just going to kind of fold down really. Move the AIO over, it just kind of loops out like that. Here's some protective covering that we'll remove. And then we've got our cooling block here. It does come with pre-applied thermal paste, so we don't have to actually use any more of that. We'll move our PCI Express extension out the way, pull all the other cables out the way, and then we just need to move this great big block out of the bottom. As we can see, this is where our motherboard's going to go, but we first need to install that IO shield, and that's going to go that way round, I believe, into here, and we'll just need to pop that into the bottom. Now it would have been nicer to have the IO shield built onto the board because it's a little bit of a pain to actually get it in here, but we managed to do it, so it's actually not too bad. It's looking pretty good in there, so let's just drop the motherboard in now. With the IO shield at the bottom, we just need to kind of drop the motherboard down now into the system. I'm not sure how we're going to do this. It doesn't seem to fit through the front, but we'll get it in there somehow. Squeeze it down, line it up to that IO shield, and then just drop it on to where the screw holes are. And then we just need the screws, and we'll tie the board down so that it can't actually move around. Now, if you're building this and you've got to this stage and you're wondering, just like I was a minute ago, how do I actually get the back of the cooler bracket on once I've actually installed it into the motherboard? Don't worry, there is a gap at the back. If we just turn the case round, you can see that they've given plenty of space here to be able to get the backing plate actually on, so that's a good thought from them and a bad one for me. I should have fit it before we actually got there, but we'll install that once we get to the cooler. But first I want to actually put some of the wiring on just to kind of see if we can get everything to fit. Now the case does come with its own power supply and it's already kind of hooked into everything. We just need to actually undo some of these ties and just kind of maneuver all the cables to where they need to be. For the main 24 pin, it's got to go into here, so it's quite a tight bend on this cable at the moment. But we'll drop it in. Then we've got to figure out where all these other cables go. There is an 8-pin cable at the front here, which is actually just going to loop straight round and go into the motherboard here. We have a front panel. It's actually in a single block, just like NZXT tends to do that. So as long as your board's got a standard front panel connection, this should actually work fine. The next one is the HD audio cable. Now that is usually located at the front of the board, which this one is. For the USB 3, it is actually underneath these big cables here, so we're gonna have to squeeze that in, but let's have a look at what else we've got. We've got a USB 2, and we also do on this case and the motherboard have a USB-C, so we're gonna have to get all of them in as well. So now that all of the cables are actually installed, we're gonna do a little bit of cable management, or as best that we can. It's always good to do a bit of cable management, particularly in a Mini-ITX system, because you want as much airflow as you possibly can, and the cases are not really designed for that much airflow anyway. Being an LGA 1700 system, you obviously need the LGA 1700 backplate. It does come with these little 3M pads on the back, which are actually little sticky pads. I'm not exactly sure what they do, apart from just hold it into place really, but you need to kind of peel the backs off them and then just install it into the back of the board, and then these little screws actually hold it down and keep it nice and tight. If you do find it a little bit tight to get that plate in, particularly once it's in the case, you can just undo the 2 screws at the front here, which is exactly what I've just done, to actually just leverage the board slightly forward a little bit, and then the bracket will just go straight in and tighten the board back down again. But now that we've got that in, we just need to obviously get the little brackets down and these little screw bits. We'll just flip it back round. With the screws now all installed, we obviously need to remove our cooler. One thing that we haven't installed yet is, of course, our fan headers. This motherboard does come with quite a few fan headers, to be honest. We've got CPU fan headers. We've got lots of different fan headers here. The case itself actually does come with a fan controller. It's built in. It connects to the USB, and of course we need to plug it into a fan header. There is an extra little cable here that's going to go back on itself, and we're going to plug that into the CPU fan header. And then of course you control everything in this system through NZXT software. It's NZXT Cam it's called. I actually like the piece of software. Many people don't, but some people do. I suppose I'm just the one person that kind of likes our software. Now I'm going to just remove some of these stickers from the actual pump it block itself. They seem to stick a lot of stickers on things. It's got a nice little NZXT logo on the inside there. Not exactly sure what this little sticker's saying. It's position tubes outways. Okay, so that's fine, because I just want to flip it round like this and then drop it down onto the CPU. For now, we're not going to maneuver those pipes outwards. We're actually going to put them inwards just so we can get these screws on. Now that we've got the NZXT pump installed, we do need to move these pipes out as the sticker instructed, because we need space now for it to actually fit. And if they're actually sticking out here, it's not going to work. I'm going to push them down into the sides for now. And then it should, as it goes round, tighten these cables and pull them down so that we don't have any problems. Want to make sure that we do have as much space as we've got, and there we go. And we should be able to just shut this up nicely. For the graphics card, I'm just going to remove these little bungs, just because sometimes it's a little bit awkward to get these in, and particularly with this space, we don't want any issues. We'll pull those cables out of the way. Drop the graphics card in. Now, as you can see from the graphics card being installed in this system, there is no problems fitting an Intel Arc A750, particularly the LE model, or the A770, because they're exactly the same, particularly when it comes to design and sizes. So you could actually get away with putting a pretty bigger card in here, something with a triple fan on it, and something much more wider. It actually looks reasonably small in here, which is quite surprising. But all we need to do now is just hook the cables up, and the graphics card is installed. With everything installed, it actually looks pretty good. There's lots of space for its things. I thought there would be less space in this, to be honest. I do have a few kind of concerns for the case itself. Building in it was pretty simple, as you guys just saw. You just basically add everything in as you would do with any other case. You have to be aware of those pipes when it comes to the all-in-one cooler. But I do have a little bit of a problem with some of the cabling on this. It does come with a 750 watt gold rated power supply, which is great, but the cables are unique to this case, so they're kind of really short, which is fine if you're building just in this case, but they're not actually that soft. They're quite rigid cables, and you'd think that they'd actually build this with very soft cables because there's not a lot of space to deal with. So you kind of end up wedging things and pushing them in, but apart from that, the actual build process itself, everything is fitting in, it's looking pretty good, and that's going to be perfect for our system. All we need to do now is just obviously put it back together again. For that, we just take the top and we kind of slide it on there, make sure it's the right way around. We've got the back panel here, and that's for this fan here. This is the exhaust fan as well as the exhaust fan here for the power supply. That's just going to click on there, and then once we do this, it's going to lock the top and the top and the sides on, and we can quite easily drop our glass panel in exactly the same. And that is pretty much how you build into an NZXT H1 case. For those of you wondering where is the I/O for this, there are I/O ports on the top, as you would normally get with any case, your power buttons, your USBs, USB-Cs, stuff like that. All the rest of the I/O is actually underneath here. Everything faces down. We've got the I/O shield for the motherboard here. Hopefully there is enough space for cables to actually come out without actually bending too much, but effectively they will just kind of come out of the system and then through this gap in the back here. Then we obviously have the power cable. It uses an extension itself to extend all the way up to the power supply, and then they actually just point it out backwards and it faces out here. So if you do have a big thick power plug, it's just going to come straight out. It's not actually going to go under the system. But there we have it. That is our build into the NZXT H1 case. This is going to replace our studio machine, and I can't wait to do it because that machine's just too big where it is, and I like to be able to move this around. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'm sure as always we will catch you guys in the next one.